The killing of Tigress Avni has sparked a huge controversy all across the country. The controversy has in fact taken a political turn now. Union Minister Maneka Gandhi has spoken out, lashing out at the Forest Minister of Maharashtra. A lot of people, including Union Minister Maneka Gandhi, have called killing a cold-blooded murder of the tigress. Now, for those of you who may not know, who is Tigress Avni? She's called T1. She was called T1 officially, and Avni by those who loved her and those who wanted her to live. She had allegedly killed 13 human beings in the Pandhakwada region of Maharashtra. However, according to activists, it was never established that Avni had everything to do with the killing of all 13 people. As a result, she was declared a man-eater by the Forest Department under the Wildlife Protection Act of India. Only the chief warden of wildlife can declare an animal to be a man-eater, and this was done in Avni's case. However, activists argue that the protocol to declare an animal to be a man-eater was not followed in Avni's case. It was done in a matter as a result of a lot of haste on the part of the Forest Department, and without following the protocol, she was declared a man-eater. Now, what happened when she was declared a man-eater? The Forest Department said that the animal, which is in fact a danger to human life in the region, has to be tranquilized, and if she's not, if all other efforts fail, the tigress may be eliminated. This matter reached at the doorstep of the Supreme Court in September this year. Remember, the Supreme Court upheld this order and said the tigress needs to be tranquilized, and again, as the last resort, she may be shot. The controversy was particularly sad because the tigress had two cubs, 10-month-old cubs, who cannot survive without their mother, and the mother has been shot dead, so their fate remains uncertain. What happened after the Supreme Court upheld this order? The Maharashtra department hired a private shooter Shafat Ali Khan, to eliminate the tigress. Now, this obviously enraged activists all across the country, because this, they said, betrayed the Forest Department's reluctance to actually tranquilize or capture the tiger, and their sort of insistence to just eliminate her anyway. Now, once this hunter was hired, the controversy sort of took an even uglier turn. Remember, it was not only activists who were protesting against his involvement. Even forest officials, as the Print had reported, had said that this man was only interested in killing the tigress, and in fact, two golden opportunities were lost to capture the tigress because of Shafat Ali Khan. Now, what's even worse is that it was not Shafat Ali Khan who eventually shot the tigress. It was his son, Asghar Ali Khan, who shot the tigress on Saturday. Now, the Print was the first to report that there was something amiss about this, because his son was never hired to kill the tigress. It was Shafat Ali Khan, and Shafat Ali Khan was apparently in some meeting in Bihar at the time this tigress was shot. So, rightly or not, this killing is being called a cold-blooded murder, a state-sanctioned murder of a tigress. Now, we have a question from Manish. Manish asks, wasn't Avni supposed to be sedated or tranquilized instead of being shot? And who is responsible for this death? As we told you earlier, she was supposed to be tranquilized. She was supposed to be darted. Now, what happens during darting? When an animal is darted, a sedative is basically shot at the animal, and once the animal is sedated, it's easier to capture the animal, and the animal can be taken to a rescue center, or in what happens in most cases, sadly, they're taken to a zoo. So, according to the Forest Department, once Tigress Avni was darted, she, instead of getting sedated, she actually charged back at the team of manhunters who were present there. This is very odd, because the moment an animal is tranquilized, because of the sedation, they sort of fall weak, and it's easier to capture them. So, the Forest Department's version that after being darted at, Avni became even more aggressive and charged at the team is sort of curious, because that's not exactly what happens. So, yes, in fact, activists are saying that this is a contempt of court, contempt of the order of the Supreme Court, which said that she ought to be tranquilized and only as a last resort she may be shot at. We have another question, and this the person has not not mentioned his name. Could Tigress Avni have been rehabilitated? What is the government's response on this? Why was a hunter hired? Again, this is actually the crux of the controversy. Why was a hunter hired? This also sort of leads us to the question that is the forest department of the country, and we have some over 150,000 forest guards across the country, are none of these guards capable enough to actually tranquilize an animal? Do these forest guards undergo training to tranquilize animals? Our sources tell us that this kind of training is very erratic, it's not regular, and it's not necessary at all that all forest guards go through this kind of training. Even we can't even say that 500 of these 150,000 forest guards undergo this training. So which is why we have to depend on these hunters, these private hunters in 21st century to shoot animals, which is in itself absurd. Could she have been rehabilitated? Yes, of course. There are some rescue centers across the country. Are they in the best shape? Not really, because these rescue centers are not only for animals which are declared to be problem animals or man-eaters. These rescue centers are used both for injured animals and for animals that are declared to be man-eaters. So there is a problem there as well. We don't have enough rescue centers. We don't have enough good rescue centers. But of course, once she would have been captured, she could have been shifted to one of them. This is not a question that has come, but it's something that a lot of people had been asking. What happens to her cubs now? So her cubs, the forest department is still looking for her cubs. They are not found. According to the affidavit that the forest department had filed in the Nagpur High Court, they had in fact said that they will have to first tranquilize the cubs and then tranquilize the tigress. Now that has clearly not happened, and as a result of which the cubs will either starve to death or they will be killed by another animal, and if at all the forest department succeeds in capturing them, they will be shifted to a zoo or some captivity center, and they will not lead the life that one would have ideally hoped for. Now another question from Kunal: is there a divide between activists who see this as a failure of our tiger policy versus the locals who have gotten rid of a man-eating menace? Of course, I mean there were reports from Maharashtra that among this village, people were bursting crackers once the news of Avni being eliminated came out. But remember that there was a lot of news that was incorrect, that was inaccurate, that was also being spread in the name of villagers. In fact, according to a letter we had accessed earlier, the forest department had said that this shooter, who is only interested in killing Avni, is kind of spreading these rumors and causing this kind of fear mongering among villagers, and is talking to the media on behalf of the villagers, and is stoking these rumors. So one cannot really be sure, but of course we have to nevertheless know that remember that 13 people did die, and 13 people did die because of tigers. So there was this element of revenge, there was this feeling of vengeance. In this case, it's always very, very complicated, because innocent tigers also become the prey or become the subject of the fury of people who have lost their children or family members. So of course there is that kind of divide, and it always stays. However, activists believe that it is imperative that when any kind of solutions are looked at for man-animal conflict, the locals need to be kept on board, otherwise all efforts are deemed to fail. We have another question from Akshay: shouldn't there be some conversation between central government and state government before taking such drastic decision, as tigers in India are as good as extinct? That's right, Akshay, there should be more conversation, but we have to remember that mostly man-animal conflict is a state subject, because the kind of requirements, say the situation in Uttarakhand would be very different from the requirements that Rajasthan, for example, would have. So it's what activists and wildlife experts typically say is that there cannot be a pan-India solution to man-animal conflict, and the solutions have to be micro. The solutions have to come from the states. Now what the state does is, the state is supposed to convene meetings. There is supposed to be a state animal advisory board. I might be getting the name of the board incorrect, but this board is supposed to convene meetings under the chairmanship of the chief minister twice a year according to the Wildlife Protection Act. Whether these meetings take place, we don't know. What we do know is that more often than not, they do not take place. Did they take place in Maharashtra? We again do not know. The point really is that the government, both state and central government, do not look at the issue of man-animal conflict with the kind of sensitivity that is required. We have a question from Priyanka. Another tigress which was run over by a tractor in UP and killed over yesterday. Elephants are run over trains all the time. We need laws to protect animals. Are there any laws into existence? Of course, there are laws into existence. As we spoke earlier, even in this case, there were protocols. There were protocols set to capture Avni. But the point is that those protocols were not followed, and as a result, and to basically get a private hunter, that just shows the inadequacy or the inefficiency of the forest department itself, and basically that does throw some light on the lack of the will on the part of the forest department. That's all we have time for now. Thanks so much for joining. Keep watching The Print.